Have you ever scrolled through endless profiles and felt a dull ache you couldn't name? An ache that says everyone else has already chosen their lane while you're still standing at the interchange. You pinch and zoom on perfect smiles, curated playlists, authentic vlogs that look suspiciously rehearsed, and the algorithm whispers, choose, choose, choose. But when the moment to choose arrives, your fingers freeze because every option feels like costume hire. That paralysis is not laziness. It's an identity vertigo that Jung diagnosed long before smartphones existed. Jung warned that when the collective myth dissolves, the individual drowns in possibilities. Myth isn't bedtime story. It's the giant container that tells you who you may be and why your struggle matters. Strip away that container and you create what he called mass man, a person who belongs everywhere and nowhere, hungry for any ideology that will dam the flood of choice. You see it in the frantic label collecting, INTP, bisexual, ADHD, neurospicy, introvert, HSP, stoic, cosmic witch, all adopted and swapped like digital trading cards in hopes one might stick. Why does the ground move? Because while myth dissolves, the persona digs in. Jung described the persona as a social skin, a mask stitched from expectations. It isn't fake, it's adaptive, like clothing in winter. The problem begins when you confuse the mask with the face beneath. Gen Z inherited turbocharged tailoring tools, filters, reels, pronoun sets, and the result is a wardrobe so vast, you forget which outfit you slept in. You shapeshift to match each platform. Ironic on X, dreamy on Instagram, corporate earnest on LinkedIn, spiritual on Be Real. Eventually the mirror lags and fatigue curls around the edges of your smile. That fatigue is a message from the self, Jung's term for the total, unedited you that pulses beneath the masks. The self cries for wholeness, the way a plant crooks toward light. When the call goes unanswered, it mutates into anxiety, brain fog, derealization, the mental health cocktail many sip daily. The culture diagnoses dopamine depletion. Jung would diagnose dissociation from archetype. You are homesick for symbols you no longer recognize. Lineage matters because identity is not invented in a vacuum. It is forged in dialogue with images the collective has carried for millennia. The hero who leaves home, the trickster who breaks rules, the mother who shields, the sage who guides. These archetypes are psychic organs. Deny them and you suffer organ failure of the soul. Open your FYP, you'll see them everywhere in cosplay. Gamers replaying the hero's grind, meme pages wearing the trickster's grin, lifestyle influencers peddling mother warmth under affiliate links. The hunger is genuine. The menu is synthetic. Transformation demands meeting the shadow, the traits you exile to keep the mask pretty. Gen Z is taught to curate, to aestheticize failure, to post-trauma with a sparkly subtitle so the discomfort scrolls easy. Yet the shadow survives every edit. It leaks as doom-scroll jealousy, as rage in comment sections, as numb binges at 3 a.m. Jung's medicine was not deletion. It was integration. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Begin by tracking energy leaks. Notice which posts spike your blood pressure, which invite the hate watch spiral. Each spike is a flare from your shadow shouting, "This is me, disowned." If the bragging entrepreneur triggers you, perhaps it's your own ambition rusting inside. If the soft life influencer irritates you, maybe your tired bones crave rest you've refused. Shadow work is self-reclamation framed as enemy interrogation. But reclamation cannot happen on a screen alone. Jung wrote that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. We numb with virtual friction because real confrontation feels fatal. Yet every rite of passage in myth demands ordeal. Enter the forest, wrestle the dragon, return with elixir. Your dragon might be the phone that never cools, the friend group that jokes about therapy but never books it, the gig that pays but hollows you. Slay does not mean destroy, it means face. When you face the dragon, psychic energy released from repression floods back, like blood returning to a numb limb. Power is not the currency social media sells you. The real currency is psychic energy, and you've been spending it like scratch-off tickets. Jung compared the psyche to an energy system where libido, life force, flows toward whatever image magnetizes it. The algorithm hijacks that flow with manufactured magnets. It sells you micro-identities, each demanding daily proof of membership. Post the aesthetic, learn the slang, repeat the outrage. Over time, the current thins, leaving you staring at a device that no longer entertains, yet still controls. Ask instead, where does my energy return with interest? Maybe it's sketching characters no one sees, maybe it's cooking soup for a roommate. Maybe it's quiet mornings, reading old myths that never trend. These humble acts reconnect you to the self, because the self speaks in symbols, not stats. When your hands shape reality, ink on paper, vegetables into broth, you exit the feedback loop of performative identity and touch tangible existence. Tangible existence is exactly what the modern economy disincentivizes. You were told to accumulate digital capital, followers, NFTs, micro-influencer deals, because that's how freedom is won. Jung would call this a collective complex, a distorting lens that turns every human into a number. Complexes skew perception, they hijack attention. The success complex says, you are what you can monetize. But the psyche rebels. It floods the night with dreams where you wander endless malls, where faces blur, where music loops without resolution, and you wake more tired than you slept. Listen, and the dream may offer a symbol, perhaps a forest path, a broken clock, a hidden door. Jung advised dialoguing with these images through active imagination. Write a conversation with the forest. Ask the clock why time shattered. Draw the door and step through in your mind. Neuroscience now calls this guided imagery and maps its impact on trauma. Jung got there first. Fantasy, if entered consciously, is not escape but encounter. When you engage the image, it engages you back, and the dialogue spills into waking life. You might notice synchronicities, books handed to you, songs repeating, strangers echoing your private question. Each coincidence is a breadcrumb pointing you home. Home is not nostalgia, it is alignment. Gen Z craves alignment the way dehydrated plants crave rain, yet mistake it for constant positivity. Alignment is quieter, a sense your thoughts, feelings, and actions hum on the same pitch. It arrives when you stop contorting to every comment thread and start treating your attention like sacred currency. Algorithms bank on boredom. Attention consecrated becomes focus, and focus grafted onto purpose becomes meaning. Meaning cures the identity crisis because identity was always a byproduct, never a goal. Acts shape character, and character announces identity like scent announces a flower. Individuation is not a solo hobby to post under number self-care. It is a subterranean tectonic shift that rearranges relationships, ambitions, even the music you enjoy. You will feel earthquakes, friendships built on mutual venting crumble, playlists sound off-key, career goals once shiny taste like aluminum. This destabilization is proof the inner plates are moving. Gen Z fears permanence because everything updates daily, but individuation asks you to plant in the soil of unchanging principles and let the outer branches sway. One principle is honesty, not the weaponized transparency of oversharing, but the quiet alignment where thoughts, words, and body language marry. Honesty turns persona into window rather than wall. Another is responsibility. Owning projections before accusing the mirror. When you say, "He made me feel small," catch the shadow whisper, "Part of me already feels small." With that admission, the emotional charge shrinks. You reclaim energy once outsourced to blame. The digital commons hates slow accountability. It rewards instant judgment. You retweet outrage in seconds. Repairing nuance can take weeks. Jung would see this as inflation, psychic energy swelling around a one-sided idea until it bursts. Inflated opinions rupture friendships, reputations, nations. The antidote is symbolic thinking, the capacity to hold paradox without explosion. Symbols unite opposites the way a yin-yang curls black into white. Gen Z's meme literacy is a hidden gift here. You already think in compressed images that jump contexts. Apply that gift inward. Let a single emoji stand for conflicting feelings. Sit with it until a new insight hatches. Wisdom is rarely loud. Jung said the psyche speaks in whispers, and if you refuse the whisper, it broadcasts through symptoms. Panic attacks, dissociation, chronic fatigue. Each is psyche raising the volume on a truth you muted. The remedy is dialogue. Ask the sensation, what image do you contain? It might offer a sinking ship, a smoking circuit, a toddler crying in an empty mall. Draw it, narrate it, move like it. Somatic imagination brings the unconscious into the body where it can discharge. Discharge clears space for subtle guidance. Algorithms cannot predict synchronicity. You think of an obscure quote and overhear it in a cafe 5 minutes later. You dream of foxes, and the next day a friend sends a fox meme unprompted. Skeptics call it coincidence. Jung calls it geometry of meaning. These convergences assure the bewildered seeker that the path is alive, that the universe co-authors your coming-of-age tale. Conversation with life requires ritual. The old religions offered collective rites. Modernity offers notification rituals instead. You wake, check phone, receive sermon from trending tab. If you don't design counterscripts, culture will inscribe one on your psyche. Start small, morning pages, candle breath, 5-minute dream journal, barefoot walk before screens. Ritual signals the unconscious that your ego intends cooperation, not domination. Over time, psyche reciprocates with images, vitality, and a spine of quiet resolve. Rootedness immunizes against the vacuum of meaning that fuels extremist recruitment. Jung witnessed Weimar youth sliding into totalitarian collectives because individual centers had collapsed. Today's equivalents lurk in algorithmic rabbit holes that promise certainty in 12 swipes. The surest defense is an individuated center that can host uncertainty without outsourcing agency. A tree stands through storms because roots anchor deeper than wind can reach. Yet roots do not isolate you. They network, like mycelium beneath communities. Individuated individuals collaborate better because they are not secretly bargaining for validation. They can disagree without annihilation. Imagine a social feed where dissent feels like jazz improvisation rather than war. That begins with you unfollowing echo chambers and cultivating dialogue partners who sharpen rather than mirror your mind. Discomfort becomes teacher instead of trigger. Education systems seldom teach dialogical thinking. They cram information. Jung would say they overpopulate consciousness and starve imagination. Gen Z senses the gap. That's why shadow work, inner child, and tarot bleed into TikTok pedagogy. Trendy but onto something, they restore imaginal literacy. The risk is novelty addiction, collecting techniques without settling into any practice long enough to germinate transformation. Depth requires ritual repetition, not endless scrolling for the next hack. Landscape is how psyche frames purpose. Purpose is not a LinkedIn headline. It is a gravitational pull felt in bones. It rarely downloads in a flash. It condenses like mist after many silent mornings. You notice recurring motifs: advocacy for animals, fascination with abandoned ruins, compulsion to code elegant loops. Track these motifs in a symbol map. Over months, a line emerges, pointing toward work only you can do. The world tells Gen Z to monetize hobbies by Tuesday. Jung would answer, let the seed ripen first. Price tags matter, rent is real, but soul-aligned work reroutes wasted psychic energy into competency. charisma, stamina. Employers, clients, audiences feel the underground spring and label it authenticity. You become magnetic not by branding, but by existing at full voltage. Voltage is sustainable because it's grounded. You're plugged into the self, not public opinion. Trends oscillate, roots hold. Remember the myth of the twins, one born in daylight, one in night. They hate each other until crisis forces collaboration, and only then do they unlock the treasure that saves their tribe. Your daylight twin is the persona, polished and verified. Your night twin is the shadow, rough and memeless. The crisis is now. Climate chaos, AI upheaval, political whiplash. If twins keep squabbling, tribe perishes. If they clasp hands, genius flows, the hybrid intelligence of light clarity and dark intuition. Hybrid intelligence looks like coding a carbon tracker after a dream of suffocating forests. It looks like therapy memes that make classmates laugh, then schedule counseling. It looks like organizing a clothing swap to fight fast fashion guilt. These micro-acts externalize the inner handshake. Jung called this transcendent function, the psychic bridge that unites opposites into a creative third. Gen Z can weaponize it as social innovation. Innovation mustn't lose soul. A startup built on unresolved shadow will scale despair. So bake reflection into the roadmap. Weekly team dream reviews, conflict circles where projection is named before it festers, design sprints opened with symbolic check-in. What animal captures your current mood, and why? Skeptical investors might smirk until they notice lower burnout, higher originality, smoother pivots. Psyche-aligned workflows are competitive advantage, and advantage carries responsibility. Step outside buildings and another teacher appears. Wilderness. Forest trails, tide pools, desert stillness recalibrate nervous systems electrocuted by notifications. Jung took analytic patience to lakeside retreats because nature mirrors the unconscious. Vast, cyclical, indifferent to ego. Gen Z activism often romanticizes nature. Individuation personalizes it. You feel ecosystem collapse in your gut, not just your newsfeed, and activism roots in lived reverence, not dread alone. Reverence rekindles myth. Maybe the new collective story is not conquest, but reciprocity. Indigenous teachings already hummed this chord. Jung admired them, but colonial arrogance muffled the melody. Your task is to listen again, sample the rhythm respectfully, remix it with tech until a soundtrack emerges that both elders and AI can dance to. Culture is a choir. Each psyche that heals adds a note. Notes become songs sung at gatherings that replace doom scroll evenings. Imagine living room salons where phones rest in a basket and people share one synchronicity of the week, one shadow insight, one budding idea. Laughter, debate, maybe a little drumming. Such micro-communities knit the social fabric algorithms tore. Identity grows sturdy when mirrored by human eyes rather than glass screens. Eyes need sleep. Gen Z's insomnia epidemic is partly blue light, partly runaway rumination. Prescribe mythic wind down, light a candle, write a sentence thanking the day's stranger who smiled. Trace one dream fragment, however blurry. Signal psyche that the theater is closing. Actors may rest. Sleep then becomes incubation box where tomorrow's archetypes gestate. Attunement breeds resilience. Resilience plus imagination equals hope. Not naive optimism, but strategic confidence that psyche can answer chaos with creativity. You walk city streets seeing crises as portals, not dead ends. The job market mutates. Prototype careers nobody listed, housing unaffordable, co-living cooperatives echo tribal housing archetypes, political gridlock, storytelling campaigns bypass cynicism with symbol-rich narrative. Narrative mastery is Gen Z's superpower. Memes outrun press releases, TikTok testimonies topple corporate secrets. Use that mastery to smuggle depth psychology into mainstream veins. A 15-second reel can plant curiosity, flash the words, shadow work, over clips of people untagging themselves from drama. Add a beat drop, caption, free energy hack. Curiosity leads to Googling. Googling leads to Jung. Jung leads to introspection. Introspection leads to individuation. Viral alchemy achieved. Calibration is contagious magic, accessible, unlicensed, unstoppable. That's why systems built on disempowerment fear self-actualized youth. They will call your reflections selfish, your rituals woo-woo, your silences suspicious. Let them. The more authentic you become, the clearer their projections appear. Return them to sender without malice. Keep walking toward the myth that whispers your secret name, the name older than username, truer than bio, engraved on the underside of your heartbeat. Somewhere a dawn is breaking, and you feel its light even if curtains block the rays, because psyche registers thresholds before retinas do. Let that subtle signal remind you the crisis of identity is not a glitch. It is a chrysalis. Inside, cells dissolve into seeming chaos, yet genetic memory choreographs a butterfly invisible to the caterpillar. Likewise, dissolving roles, labels, and certainty feels like cultural death, but blueprint of possibility is encoded deeper than confusion. Trust that code. It murmurs through hunches that won't fade, friendships that feel like déjà vu, ambitions that survive embarrassment. Feed it with attention the way you'd water a seed, regular, unhurried. When doubts hiss, counter with Jung's reassurance. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Privilege entails responsibility. Becoming is work, but work aligned with essence uplifts rather than drains. Remember to laugh mid-quest. Laughter ventilates chambers shadow work can make stuffy. In myth, the trickster cracks solemn ceremonies so new air enters. Adopt that medicine. Share memes about therapy. Joke about spiral journeys. Celebrate micro wins like sleeping 8 hours or deleting one toxic chat. Such levity proves integration is not grim duty, but dynamic balance. Balance anchors courage. With courage, you test new identities as explorers test bridges. Gingerfoot first, full stride once the beam holds. Some beams will snap, splash, you learn, climb back, redesign. There is no final persona checkpoint, only evolving iterations, each truer than the last. Measure progress not by likes, but by how quickly you notice misalignment and correct course without self-shame. When sunset arrives, practice gratitude for both masks worn and masks shed. They all served. The selfie filter taught creativity. The burnout taught limits. The echo chamber forced critical thinking. Bow to each teacher, then let them fade. Night will deepen and dreams will assemble tomorrow's curriculum. Attend class with notebook open. One day you'll catch your reflection and sense spaciousness behind the eyes. Roomy, breathable, alive. That space is self. It doesn't need validation but enjoys connection. Doesn't fear solitude but loves community. Doesn't clutch identity but dances with it. Stand in that space and the Gen Z identity crisis becomes initiation. Initiation complete. Step outside. Offer presence, not performance. Offer myth, not marketing. Offer human being, not human brand. The world, starving for originals, will recognize you like a long-lost constellation and subtly rotate, making room for your light. And you, finally at home in your own sky, will know the ache was guidance all along. But if you've listened this far and a pulse of recognition still thrums in your chest, the journey isn't finished. It's cresting. Because insight unfelt is still theory, and theory unexpressed dries like ink in a cracked pen. Translation into action begins right now, inside the device you're holding, inside the breath you're taking. Close your eyes for a heartbeat, and picture the version of you who no longer scrolls for proof of existence. See the shoulders drop, the jaw loosen, the gaze steady. That self is not a fantasy. It's a probable future waiting for one decisive vote from the present you. Cast it by pressing the simplest symbol of commitment on this page, the button that says subscribe. It looks trivial, just a rectangle, a bell, but it is a public whisper that says, I'm in. Algorithms will read it as data. Your psyche will register it as promise.
Now, while that promise is still warm, drop a single sentence in the comments that stakes your intention. Nothing ornate, 5 words can sculpt destiny. Something like, I reclaim my inner myth, or, Shadow, let's talk tonight. Your phrase plants a flag in communal soil where strangers witness and silently nod. Jung reminded us that individuation may be personal, but it is never private. Each soul that ripens nourishes the collective unconscious. Your comment becomes a breadcrumb for someone wandering the same dark forest, proof that the path holds more footprints than they feared.
And if the echo of this exploration keeps humming behind your ribs long after the video ends, share the link with one friend whose eyes glaze when identity talk surfaces at 2 a.m. The share icon is not mere outreach, it's alchemical contagion. One tap can tilt another psyche towards self-retrieval, and every psyche that steadies becomes another anchor in a tilting world.
While we're building anchors, download the free reflection workbook pinned below. 10 pages, no fluff, archetype prompts, dream tracking grids, a weekly shadow audit. Print it, scribble on subway rides, spill coffee across revelations, make it live. Paper turns ethereal ideas into fingerprints and smudges, and those smudges testify that you showed up. Still hungry? The newsletter, one email every Friday, delivers bite-sized synchronicities, mythic film breakdowns, and community challenges like 48 hours of conscious silence or build your symbol altar from thrift shop finds. Reply to any edition and you speak straight to me. The inbox is our campfire. Stories shared there often sprout into future scripts, meaning your voice doesn't just join the conversation, it steers it. Yet remember, calls to action are scaffolding, not sanctuary. The real architecture rises each dawn when you decide, again, to value presence over performance. Tomorrow morning, before you touch a screen, ask, which archetype needs airtime today? Maybe the warrior who laces sneakers and runs until the mind empties. Maybe the lover who texts gratitude to a sibling. Maybe the sage who sits 10 minutes in unhurried reading. Honor just one, and the identity crisis shrinks another notch because energy once scattered now attends a single flame. Carry that flame into the world and observe how reality rearranges. Colleagues sense steadiness and mirror it. Strangers hold doors and conversations linger. Setbacks sting but no longer define. Every outer adjustment confirms the inner vote you cast with a click, a comment, a breath. So let this be our closing handshake. You, me, the mythic river that carried Jung's words into the digital century. If something in this current feels like home, grip it, subscribe, speak, share, practice. And when the next video surfaces like a message in a bottle, answer. Because the story of becoming is serial, episodic, infinite, and the next scene is already cresting the horizon, waiting for you to step on screen.